You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast. I have David Ewing Duncan. He's a best-selling author of many books, and he's got a lot going on. So when speaking to him about his bio, I realized if I give the bio, I'll probably screw it up. The bio is so expansive and covers so many cool things that it's better to let him give it. So if you don't mind, David, thanks for coming, and please give listeners the portion of the bio that would be relevant for them today.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. Basically, I'm a writer, author. I have started a couple companies as well, but I've written 10 books, hard to believe. And the last one was called Talking to Robots, Tales from Our Human and Robot Futures. But I've written books, adventure travel books. I was a foreign correspondent, written about that, and also write for Wired, Vanity Fair, New York Times, places like that. So I guess that's enough.
Okay. You're almost a ne'er-do-well, but not quite. Just kidding. But yeah, you're into a lot of things. That's great.
No, I like ne'er-do-well. Yeah, that could be my title, Chief Ne'er-do-well Officer.
Well, let's talk about the Talking to Robots book, for a start, that just came out. What's the book about? And then tell me why you decided to write about this topic.
Talking to Robots is really a culmination of me reporting on, cutting edge technologies, mostly in the life science space, but also, in the AI and robotics space. And it's partly about the technologies themselves, but it's really more about what these technologies mean for us as humans. So what I've done in Talking to Robots, I've taken 24 kind of robots or AI systems, really 20 areas of kind of human activity, and I've created a kind of robot scenario around each one of them. And so we have a warrior bot, which would be like automated warfare systems. We have a teddy bot, which would be robots that take care of our kids. There's a doc bot. There's a sex bot. And what I do as a reporter, I report on these robots, what's happening in the present. But the whole story, each of these stories is told from the future by a narrator who's not identified. It could be man, a woman, a robot, who knows. But this narrator knows how things turn out in the future. And in fact, there are different scenarios. It gives me a kind of platform to be able to write about, what might happen with automated warfare. And I'm actually, creating these fictional stories around what the future might be, or sex bots, or some of these other robotic systems. So that's basically what the book is about.
So in general, do you think that people are going to embrace or be forced to have interactions with bots of all sorts in their life and in the near future? Or what's the landscape look like?
Well, we actually already are. It's not like robots we see in sci-fi. That look a lot like us, like humans, are kind of the imaginary versions. I don't know, starting like with the Jetsons, or even earlier than that. If you think about it, every time you summon an Uber, or sign up for an Airbnb, you're actually interacting with a robot. And by robot, by the way, I have a pretty broad definition, which includes pretty much any smart machine. And so, Uber is basically, it's a mix of AI systems and humans. I mean, you order an Uber, it goes into the AI system. The AI system finds a car that's close to you. It then informs the driver to go pick you up, and then links back with you having summoned it to tell you the car's coming. I mean, we're already kind of working with, certainly an AI system, right there, and we're doing this more and more. A lot of us don't even entirely realize it. That's not a bad thing. It's just, in a way, it's already here.
Well, do you find yourself interacting with robots quite a bit? I mean, I guess you can call your cell phone one, and like you said, you can call Uber's app one, and I don't know, like what kind of things jump out at you from having written this work and done the thinking involved in writing it?
Well, there's several themes in the book, and they're themes I've been writing about for a long time. Previous books and articles. It's really first of all, it's about technology being a somewhat neutral force. I mean, a lot of people think that technology is good just because it's technology. Some people are fearful of technology, but it's really a reflection. Our technologies that we build are tools to help us as humans to do things better. And it kind of depends on what we mean by better. And, Dean Kamen, the inventor who's in the book, talks about technology amplifying what's good about humans and amplifying what's bad about humans. So you can get some really bad people using technology in really evil ways. You can get good people using the same technology, to help people. So ultimately, the book and my thinking around all this is really about the spectrum of human nature and how we've reached this critical inflection point, throughout our long history, where we're no longer like worrying about the spectrum of good versus evil with just humans. We're actually trying to figure out how we design all of that into machines. How do we design safeguards? How do we prevent biases being programmed into machines that, I mean, Uber is not yet, it's not yet like interacting with us in a sort of empathetic way or like maybe another human would. There's no real emotional, sometimes you feel emotional when your Uber's late, but the system itself is not at an emotional level, but it's not long. It won't be long until we have robots and machines that are, interacting with us at a level beyond just, kind of functional level. And who programs that? Who programs morality and ethics into these things?
Maybe a better example is our interaction with, Facebook and Google, calling them machines. I mean, there's definitely a tremendous emotional component there, and they're having their way with us, data-wise and otherwise, it seems, and emotion-wise. So I don't know if you've explored that, but I guess if you want to lump them in with robots, those are probably some of the biggest players.
No, absolutely, and that's another system where we're we love Facebook in some ways. We can communicate with people and keep up with people and see what everybody's up to. But obviously, we've seen what can go horribly wrong when there aren't what I would consider proper safeguards built in. Because it turns out that there are really some bad players in the world who have taken that platform, which was set up, to basically help us connect each other, and use it for their own, to try to manipulate us politically or manipulate our political system. And Facebook itself, turns out is using it to manipulate us to buy things and, to be marketed to and using our data. And so, I mean, that's a great example of where I think that a business, partly it's a business model that was created for Facebook and its investors to make money by prospecting data and then creating marketing engines based on that, which in the beginning didn't seem that bad to people. I mean, versions of that have been done for a long time by the media and other places, but it's clearly gotten out of hand. And you're starting to get even health data. I just had a conversation with somebody about that. They're actually starting to use neural data, for instance, to try to get us to buy things. And I think we have to really step back and see what it means to be interacting with that robot. I mean, Facebook itself, the AI system, it isn't interacting with us, like with emotional programming. But you certainly are seeing that if you don't have proper ethics or morality built into the programming, it can really be abused. And I don't know. I'm getting more and more prone to like just not look at it or turn it off sometimes.
Yeah, no, I understand. So what do you see as the future of this interaction in the near term, meaning 5 years, and then maybe longer term, 15, 20 years?
Well, I think, like I said, I think we're at a critical point, and we're sitting here, arguing about issues that are important, politically and as a society, but we aren't really talking about, I think, what might be in the long run, is at least as important, which is, who, like I said, who programs these systems? Who should there be regulation? Is kind of government regulation the option here? They're speaking with somebody from Germany yesterday, and the Europeans are coming close. They probably will be regulating at least Google, if not the other big tech companies, fairly soon. It's anti-competitive stuff, but they're also looking into privacy. I think we need to really be seriously thinking about this right now, because we're still in the early phases of these technologies, and there's still time to probably fix them or direct them towards being more on the good side of how we use technology. But as the years go by, it's going to be harder and harder to do that, and that's part of what happens in my book. And these future scenarios, by the way, they're written like short stories. They're plots, and some of them turn out really well, some of them turn out horribly for humans, and it's partly because I don't think we really know which way it's going to go right now. And we certainly, scare ourselves to death watching dystopic shows on Netflix and movies. And I mean, how many times can we have an apocalypse of machines or zombies or whatever? I mean, it's like we're sort of terrified of all that.
Right.
On the one hand, while on the other hand, we all use our phones. We love these technologies, our computers. So that's a talk I've been giving on why we love and fear technology, and why we should probably pay attention to both aspects. We should pay attention to why we love these technologies, but there's also, it's worth paying attention to why we're afraid of them too, or why we're anxious about them.
Right. So do you see there's a dehumanization because of all the robots? I mean, do you see it reducing person-to-person interactions, just changing the dynamic, all those things? I mean, again, what's the overall feeling you've gotten from the work required to do this book?
I don't, again, I don't think it has to go down a road of dehumanizing us. That certainly is one way it could go. There have been some interesting movies, like, I don't know if you saw this pretty stupid movie, but it was called Idiocracy. And it had really just, it's one of those movies that had a pretty good premise, but was sort of silly. But this guy gets frozen, in this military experiment in this, kind of cryonics tube, and an accident happens, and he wakes up like hundreds of years in the future. And he's kind of medium smart. He's actually not very bright. But when he wakes up, everybody on the world is like completely stupid, and they don't even know. And they have all these machines that run everything, and they don't know anything about the machines. And he turns out to be the smartest guy on the planet. It's a comedy, because everybody else has just let themselves become so moronic. And I don't see that literally happening, but I think we have to be careful about what we wish for in some ways. I mean, the more machines do for us, the less we know how to do things for ourselves. Not that that's inherently bad, but I just think we have to be aware of it. And, things like turning off your phone. My good friend Tiffany Schlain has a new book out that just came out 2 days ago called 24/6. And she's talking about 24 hours, 6 days a week. And on the seventh day, you turn off all your technology and you hang out with your family and your friends. And it's already taking off. I mean, this book has already gotten a lot of attention even before it came out. And she's in my book, by the way. She and her husband and daughter came up with one of the robots. And I didn't mention about the book that each of the chapters has what I call a human collaborator, or several collaborators. And they help me kind of put together what these robots are like. So, I interview people like Kevin Kelly, the futurist, Brian Greene, the physicist, Esther Perel, whose relationship kind of sex expert, who's a sex bot, and Tiffany, who's a filmmaker and created the Webbies, if you remember the Webbies Awards. Her book 24/6 is actually part of a chapter called Memory Bot, which is about a robot in the future that helps us remember things, including people that we love who have died, and you create kind of versions of them that you can continue to talk to. But even that got into issues like, okay, let's say somebody had a really terrible thing happen to them. Do you want to remember that in your memory bot, or do you delete it?
Right.
And what does that mean if you're just remembering the good things? Because we supposedly learning to get stronger
about
things. Yeah.
What about public versions of a person's persona, and who would shape that? Who would, like, let's say Einstein, what if you were able to somehow reconstruct, a memory bot of him? What would he be like? What would be included? What would be left out, et cetera? And if it was used in teaching, what would happen from there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that have had terrible things happen to them would love to just forget that or edit it out. And maybe if you had that technology, that would be fine. But even as a society, do we want to forget, when things have gone horribly wrong? Like I don't know, we in that discussion I had with them, we even talked about the Holocaust. I mean, would you want to edit that out? I mean, I don't think so, because you don't want it to ever happen again.
That's usually what makes people fascinating. Yeah, that's usually what makes people fascinating. Heroes and all that always have character flaws, and everyone does. The people we know, everyone has flaws. So I mean, to edit those out, it might actually ruin your memories of a person, because they might become boring to you. Let's say, and you may say, "What?"
Well, I think everybody would be
boring.
boring. Yeah. You had a sanitized version of everybody's life. I mean, again, there's certain horrible things that, I guess people, well, it gets down to a question like, should people have control over their memory bot? Should they decide what's in there and what's not, and how does that affect other people? Anyway, you can kind of see where this goes, and those kind of questions come up across the different technologies. And
it'd be cool if you were able to capture, let's say great thinkers in the field of physics, for instance, and make a memory bot of them, but also endow it with an AI that essentially is trained on their way of thinking, and then you could use a series of these, like AI-esque trained memory bots of, again, great physicists to help you on projects you're working on, or to help science on, on a given area. It's like being able to ask them, what would Einstein do? What would so-and-so do? Just a thought.
Well, actually, there is a robot in the book called Godbot. And Godbot is not like a religious god. Some of my human collaborators for the book, I actually asked them what kind of robot they would like to meet in the future, or be afraid of meeting. And we can come back to that in a sec, because that's a question that I'm asking a lot of people in salons and other things. And we go around the room. But I went to Brian Greene, the physicist, and I asked him what kind of robot he would like to meet in the future or be afraid of meeting. And he started describing a robot kind of like what you were just saying. It would basically, it's a robot that would be able to explain to him the secrets of the universe. And it would take all of the theories that, it takes a lifetime to learn, Newtonian physics, relativity, quantum mechanics, all the things that are so difficult for even the smartest people as physicists to learn. And it would just sort of somehow impart that to him so he could start, learning about new things. But then beyond that, this robot would actually know the secrets of the universe and could teach him how the universe began, how it ended, all the things that, he's a theoretical physicist, all the things that he thinks about. And, as he says, he tries to express them through mathematical equations, which he says is fun, but it's inexact. And so as we got talking, we realized if you had a robot that could explain how the universe began and ended and everything in between, it would basically be like a godlike figure. I mean, again, not a religious God, but the kind of God that, knows how things work. And if you could impart that to humans, I don't know, would time cease to exist? Would that dimension, time even? And so we kind of had some fun. In the future, people can live in all different times. And you travel in these ships called timeliners. and you move around in space and time. And there's some people that don't like that. They actually like linear time, so they can certainly live that way if they want to. Anyway, that's the kind of thing we just had so much fun. I mean, sitting here talking to Brian Greene for 90 minutes about this stuff was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I guess I don't know. I guess I have a curiosity. I'm sure everyone does. How about the sex bot part? What interesting issues would be there? If your spouse is with a sex bot, are they cheating on you? What kind of dynamics do you find when you run to the
It took you long enough to get to the sex bot. Anyway, no, that's always funny. Everybody always asks about the sex bot. Yeah, in fact, the chapter is called Sex, and then in parentheses, Intimacy Bot. And I put intimacy in there at the request of my human collaborators that I talked to. And these were 3 women sex therapists, kind of relationship therapists like Esther Perel and a couple of other amazing women who they said right away that, and one of them, Bryony Cole, is actually kind of an expert on the technology of sex. I mean, that's something she covers, in her practice and in her podcasts, and I guess she has a satellite show. So she's really up on sex robots and things. And first of all, there aren't really sex robots. I mean, there are dolls that look like humans, and some of them are outfitted with AI to be able to talk. They can kind of talk to you, tell you how great you are, and it's almost all guys that buy them. But the way that these sex bots are marketed, it's all about companionship and loneliness. And one of the taglines of the biggest sex bot company is called robotics. They market using the term, be the first to never be lonely again. So that tells you something about what's really going on with sex bots. It's less about sex and a lot more about intimacy and, just being with, if you can't be with a real human or you're scared of that or whatever, I guess a machine. And there are a lot of people that buy these machines to have somebody to talk to that tells them how great they are all the time. And it's not that different. An extension of that, which my collaborators pointed out very quickly, that's more familiar to people who wouldn't buy a sex bot, is our phones. I mean, we have an intimate relationship, most of us, with our phones, and we use it for all kinds of things, including kind of a surrogate for other humans. And we check Facebook when we got a human sitting right next to us we could be talking to. So
it's true. Yeah.
Sort of interesting issues. Yeah.
Well, my wife has said that she thinks sometimes men only want food and sex, so maybe that's why men like these sex bots so much. I think there's more to it, companionship and encouragement.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, we're probably not. Yeah, we probably really are about that complicated. But yeah, in fact, these relationship therapists all talk about how many of their clients are women trying to understand why their men would rather play a video game than hang out with them. And we can sort of chuckle at that a little bit, but it's actually, especially there's a lot of statistics on. Millennials are the first generation that have really grown up with these machines, and the statistics are not looking good for relationships and marriage and having kids. I think there are a lot of other factors probably playing in there, but certainly some of it has to do with spending 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day on your phone. You're not having as much time to have intimate relationships.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get certain people to look up. They're constantly looking at their phone, and it's a whole societal issue.
Yeah, it's huge.
Any other areas of robot interaction that you didn't even know existed, or really surprised you, or changed your view big time?
Now that's a great question, because there certainly were a number of them. Even in my own field, in journalism, I had no idea how pervasive AI systems are at major newspapers. And it probably started with the Washington Post in the 2016 Rio Olympics, where they introduced an AI system that basically was programmed with a lot of formulaic sports stories. And rather than having a human writing these stories, they actually had an AI, and then they would just fill in the blanks, whatever sport it was and what the score was. And the AI was able to choose from different sort of metaphors and phrases, and it's hard to tell the difference. I mean, these are pretty formulaic even when humans write them. They're really basic stories. And then since then, most Wall Street Journal and New York Times, they all have AI systems, and they use it for financial stories, kind of basic political stories like who won what election, and then sports. And that was surprising to me, although in some ways it's not, because again, those are not. I mean, as a human and as a journalist, you formerly, even had to write some of that stuff. I mean, that's really brain dead kind of writing for a human. So maybe it's fine that machines do that. I just, as a journalist, want to know where it stops. So, when are they coming after me? And we haven't even really talked about that. Yeah, the whole idea of robots replacing humans in jobs. There is a chapter called "The blankety blank robot that stole my job," and in that future scenario, every single human on Earth has had their job taken by a robot, including Larry Page and Jeff Bezos. They got fired by their own algorithms, and so we have full unemployment. And we, obviously it's tongue in cheek, but then we decide, hey, wait, maybe this wasn't such a good idea to automate everything. And so in that scenario, these really smart entrepreneurs that are suddenly out of work, they spend their time trying to figure out how to bring humans back into the equation, which they realize they should have done in the first place.
Huh. So what are your thoughts on the future of automation? Do you think that it's going to be expansive, or do you think it's really just going to change the nature of work?
Well, again, I mean, we've been kind of running experiments on this as humans for a really long time. I mean, automation has been around really since the Industrial Revolution started. And in the past, when we invented a new technology and learned how to automate or simplify certain processes like manufacturing, that usually came with a whole slew of new jobs. I mean, the invention of the internal combustion engine in cars created whole new industries that nobody ever would have dreamed of, like building roads and building bridges, and gas stations and the energy sector, and I mean, massively created jobs, as well as replacing all the people that used to take care of horses. So that's kind of kept us on the right side of that equation for quite a long time. But again, the difference right now is there's so much happening at the same time. I mean, we're automating broad swaths of every industry, every field, all aspects of society are being automated. I would argue in a fairly, thoughtless way. I mean, it's being driven a lot by private companies that have shareholders, and if you fire 1,000 humans and eliminate their salaries and benefits, the stock price goes up. Replace them with robots, and that may make sense for that company and for the shareholders, but it's not a real good incentive to, for society. You should probably think it out a little bit more. And that's about to happen with driverless cars. There is a chapter about that too. Should we just simply replace hundreds of millions of professional drivers around the world?
Right.
What's going to happen to them? Will there be jobs for them? I mean, right now, a lot of them are already. Now, a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers are actually people that have been displaced from other industries. So you take that away. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, again, just to underscore the point, I think we have to do something we're not very good at as humans, which is we need to really think this out. Like, is it a good idea to have, driverless cars take over everything, or is there a role for humans? I would argue that there is. I mean, you could create much safer cars, and humans, could drive them in like certain areas like cities, right now the AI systems can't always pick up on all the nuances, and kind of complicated, driving through complicated, streets with a lot of things going on. But they're great for long haul stuff. Set them loose on the highways, and that will displace some drivers. But anyway, it's just if we think more like human plus robots rather than just robots, I think we'll be a lot happier.
So I don't know. This is maybe really a tough question, but now that you've done so many books in so many areas and learned all kinds of things, like, I don't know, how do you feel different as a person having tried and learned and gone deep into all these subjects, all these topics? Has it changed the way you live or think or what you do?
Yeah, it really has. I mean, I'm lucky as a person that's probably way too curious about everything that I've been able to, as a journalist, hang out with inventors and creators and scientists and engineers. I'm incredibly lucky, with that. But I don't know. I mean, I think in some ways, especially doing this last project, I've a better understanding the role of kind of people-to-people relationships. And I'm always somebody that kind of thinks in big issues like global warming. Let's deal with it at a global level, and that has to be done. But I think that there's also a role for just individuals getting together and just being connected as humans. And I think in a funny way, technology might be pushing us back towards that. Like with Tiffany Schleyn's book about taking a day off, and it's certainly making us think about it more. I don't know if we're actually going to do anything about it, but for me personally, I think it's made me think more about that. Enjoy the people in my life, the actual humans, and not, use the machines to make my life easier or to do the things I need to do, but not at the expense of human relationships.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you have your next book cooking in your head, or is it too soon?
Well, weirdly enough, I'm almost done with another book. It's been insane to be working on two books at the same time, but this one it's back in my life science biology area, and it's about the microbiome of the planet. What I mean by that is there are 5 million trillion microbes, and mostly bacteria, that connect all life on Earth. They're everywhere, where they connect us with the air and the water and the soil, and they connect us with each other. And it's almost like there's a life force on the planet. And I'm working with a famous scientist named Craig Venter, who is on the leading edge of studying what's called environmental microbiology. But there's a cautionary part of this too, which is that we are, while we know about climate change, we're also affecting the microbiome of the planet. This kind of life force. We're changing it. And it's not being changed in a good way for us.
Interesting. And that's coming soon. And what's that book going to be called?
Well, even as we're talking here, I got an email from my agent that they're talking about setting a pub date. It'll probably be next spring or summer.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm fooling around with titles right now. I hesitate to tell you it's going to be something around like the indispensable life of Earth's smallest creatures, something like that.
Gotcha.
So, and then, what's going on?
Well, very good. Well, it's been a good talk. I mean, it's funny. I guess you're like, I don't know. If I talk to you about different subjects, it would be like talking to different people because you've been through so many things, which is cool. I find people that are, polymaths or Renaissance people, I guess I call them, are like that. So, it's been a good call. So, I guess all your books are on Amazon and Kindle and all the great places to get them.
Yep, and I have a website. It's davidyewingduncan.com, and it's David, and then Ewing is my middle name, and then Duncan.com. And it's got books and articles and research projects, and I did crazy things when I was younger, like bicycle around the world. So it's got a lot of stuff on that. That was the first book, kind of adventure travel stuff. So so check it out.
All right, excellent. Well, David, it's been good having you, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Take care.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.